Hello everyone and welcome back to the public facing training. My name is Mike, and I'm really excited to be delivering the session to you. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope it's not too hot where you are. It'd be great to hear where you're tuning in from. So please put it in the chat where you are. So we have our Q&A section in Zoom. So this is live. So please, it'd be great to see any questions that you have, and my colleagues Amber and Gregoire will be able to answer those in the chat. We will also have a bit of time at the end to answer any last remaining questions as well. So this is a podcast session today. It'd be interesting to see who's doing what out there. Who's doing podcasts, who's doing multicam kind of workflows. And we've got a bit to go through today, and we'll step through it together. So let's jump into it. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And here is DaVinci Resolve that we have, which is great. So for those of you who are kind of new to DaVinci Resolve, I'll just go a quick little introduction. So this is obviously DaVinci Resolve, and it's broken down into these different pages. So you've got your media page where you can organize and import media, but you can also do the importing in a variety of different pages as well, because the media pool goes across. We've got our new photo page, new to DaVinci Resolve 21. We've got the cut page, which is really good for fast turnaround multicam editing. And we will touch on this at the end, around the last 10-15 minutes of the session. And then we'll look at our traditional NLE. This is where we're going to be spending most of the training today. So we're going to look at the traditional multicam workflow. And then we're also going to have a little kind of introduction into motion graphics and templating in Fusion, which is, as you can imagine, is for motion graphics and compositing. Then we're going to have a little look at the color page as well, and how to match shots and working with different codecs. And then we're going to spend a bit of time in the Fairlight page, which is our digital audio workstation, and we'll look at how we can improve audio, also with fast and powerful AI tools, and also with a bit more detailed workflow as well, if you've got time to do that. And then we'll look at some of the deliveries that we were typically going to see with a podcast workflow. Just before we go any further, this is just our Blackmagic design support page. So if you see here, this is our product families, so we can see this here, and it's got the latest downloads for DaVinci Resolve down here, so you can download the different versions for your operating system. And then you've got some really useful documentation and support notes here as well, including the manual. So it's just good to be aware of that. And just to jump back into DaVinci Resolve, when you install the latest version of DaVinci Resolve Studio, it downloads most of the features, but there's also the Extras Download Manager, which is up here in the top left. So if you click on the DaVinci Resolve, obviously I'm on a Mac today, but it might look slightly different on a different operating system, but you'll see up on the top here, you'll have your Extras Download Manager. And here you can actually choose to download some extra AI features. Now, before we go any further, it's important to note that any of these kind of AI features are local. So they're local to your computer. You can be offline. When you're doing that, you don't need to be having access to the internet in order to carry out those features. So it's just important to know that that's there. And just some quick ones on here. So the next bit that I wanted to show, this is just a bit of some housekeeping that's universal to any training that I like to show. In the preferences, you've got two sections here. So you've got the system section, which is how DaVinci Resolve works with your computer and any hardware. And an important part here is the background tasks, which is new to DaVinci Resolve 21. So you can enable background renders, which is really, really useful. This button here, when ticked, means that if I'm doing something with the mouse in the foreground, it means that the background processing won't affect my performance, which is super useful. And we're going to be using the background transcription and proxy generation as well. And on the user section, just wanted to point out again the project save and load. So if you're new here, this is super important to just make sure that you're protecting your work. So I always recommend to have live save on, which makes sure that it's always constantly taking a snapshot of the project. So if anything goes wrong, you can always load it back up to how you last left it. And having project backups and timeline backups is really, really useful. And you can choose how frequently those backups are going to happen and where those backups are going to be stored. So it's important to note that. Another important thing as well is with the editing side of things, I have all the automatic smart bins on. So I find it really useful that when I apply metadata, like scene metadata, that it will make me a smart bin with that in mind. And then as a kind of a universal rule, if you see a 3-dot menu in the top right corner, that's typically a menu. So if you click on the menu, you can see here that we can actually save preferences. And once we have a preference, so if I was to call this mic, when I have that preset, I can then basically export that and import it into another machine. So if you have a team that are working together on a regular basis and you want to have the same preferences, this is a great way of doing that. So let's have a quick look now at the project manager. So this is where your projects are stored. So if you're new to DaVinci Resolve, this is where they are. And you can see a bit more information here on the type of project library. So you can see that the local project libraries are local to my machine. Then we have network project libraries, which is where they're on the same network, and you can use another application called the project server, which is free, and you can download from our website. And then you have Blackmagic Cloud, which allows you to collaborate with your colleagues over the internet. We're just going to be working in our local project library today. And you can see here that you can back up your project libraries and you can duplicate them and restore them as well. So you can do all those different things that you need to do there. So I've made a project here. And if you need to make a new project, you can just do so down here, or you can right click and you can see that you've got basically a contextual menu that gives you the option to make a new project. And you'll see this throughout DaVinci Resolve. There's so many different ways to do the same thing. It's a case of finding what works best for you. So you've got lots of options when it comes to working with DaVinci Resolve. So I'm just going to go into my project here. And in the bottom right, I'm just going to show my project settings. So this is the project settings down here in the little cog down here that you can go to. So you can access that down here, which is great. And you can also go back to your project library, your project manager, using this little house icon down here as well. And this little icon here is showing that I have a panel connected, and it's telling me how it's connected as well. So I'm connected by Bluetooth. And we'll look at the speed editor later on in the session. So I've already brought some media into the project, and it's super easy to do so. You can either use the file import, and you can then go to the media. You can do that, or you can actually just drag the media in, and you can actually maintain the folder structure as well. So for example, if I was to, let's go to video and we were to delete that, let's go to our Finder now. So if I go to my Finder, just to bear in mind, with the interface going through this now, on the left we have our media pool. So this is obviously where our media sits. These are our effects here down at the bottom. We're not going to look too much at the edit index here, but it basically is more for a drama workflow, but also it points out where markers are in timecode. And then you've got a sound library, which you can download for free from our website. You've got our keyframe editor, which you can turn into keyframe curves, which we'll look at in a moment later on. Then you've got your quick exports, which we'll look at as well, and will show you how to make presets. And then you've got our mixer, which isn't as fully detailed as the Fairlight page, but we'll have a little look at that. And then the metadata, as you can imagine, is where we can add metadata, but it's not the only place where we can add metadata. We can also add metadata in the media pool as well, and we'll have a little look at that. And then we've got the inspector here, which is our clip level changes. So if I click on a clip, it brings it up into the inspector, and then based on what type of clip that is, it will then give us the options in the inspector to make any changes. So this is a audio only clip at the moment, so it's not giving me any options with the video section as well. So that's the first thing. And then obviously this is our timeline, which you can imagine. What I really like using basically the display stacked timelines. So I find that really useful to be able to go quickly between different timelines. And here as well, you can open up a second timeline if you wanted to. So if you make another timeline, you can then copy between the timelines if you need to. But that's just good to see the interface there. What if it looks a little different to my screen? If you're looking at your Resolve, there's two things that might have happened. You might have changed the interface. So with Workspace, you can actually have layout presets. So I could load a preset and it will change the interface slightly. You can also reset the layout. So if you go to Workspace, you can see that you can choose to hide pages. You can choose to basically reset the layout there. And at the moment, I've got the two monitors open up there. So I've got my source viewer, and then over here I've got my timeline viewer, which I don't have a timeline yet, so that's why that is there's nothing in there at the moment. And then this is an important part here. So you can choose between having the single viewer and the dual viewer there as well. So that's really, really important. Also, if you have a smaller resolution screen, you might have to close some of the kind of panels here in order to get the dual screen mode. So I'm using this at HD, so I have to close down my inspector in order to get my two viewers open here. So that's just kind of a quick overview of the edit page interface, where we're going to be doing most of our training in there. So let's bring in some files. The other thing as well is if you are in full screen mode, it will make it difficult to actually bring things in. So I actually recommend resetting it so it's just like this, so it's not in the full screen mode. I recommend that you keep it like this with just almost full screen mode, but not completely. It just gives you a little bit more flexibility in the interface, especially when you're going into things like your Finder and such things as that. So let's bring this in. If I go into here, let's go into our Finder down here. And I've got my media on a drive here, external drive. And this is the folder that I would like to have. And I'd like to bring in my video media here. Now, if I drag this into here, it's going to not maintain my folder structure, and it's actually just going to bring in the clips. So you can see that it's done that. I'm going to edit undo with Command Z. So you can see here with the undo here. And it's just important to note here as well that another big part of DaVinci Resolve and editing and making it easier to come across from another NLE is basically using the keyboard customization, which allows you to work in a bit more personal way. So we do have kind of presets for other NLEs, but I would always recommend making your own personal preset. So if you make any changes, so in this case, if I was to find the Smart Insert, and if I was in the edit section, so if I go to edit, or if I go to, let's say, if I search for append, There we go. So I've got the append to end timeline, and I've set that as number 3. So I always use the number 1 is smart insert, and then 2 as place on top, and then 3 as append, and then 4 and 5 I use as a basically extend edit as well. So with that, you can go to your 3-dot menu, like a lot of the interface, and you can save this as a new preset. And then with your presets, you can basically import and export your presets as well. So that's super useful when you're working very quickly and effectively. So I'm going to bring in my video once again, but this time we're going to drag it over to the basically this bit here, which shows the order of what we call bins, which is the term that we use in editing, but it's the same idea as a folder. So if I now bring the video section over to the media bit here and let go, it's now going to bring in my folder structure that I had with DaVinci Resolve, in the Finder section with that. Just to quickly show that in my project settings, I've set this to HD. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to set this to be at 30 frames per second and my playback rate at 30 as well. And what I'll do is I'll save this as a preset. So I'll save this setting and I'll call this podcast. I'm quite happy with that. And if I have a look at my presets now, I could import and export those project settings. And when you're doing this, you can also set this as your default, your current settings as default preset, which means every time that you make a project now, until you change that, it will open up with those settings. So it just can save you a lot of time when you're in there. Okay, so now that we've brought in our media, we're now going to do some syncing that we're going to do. But just before we do that, I'm just going to show you the tabbed bins and the custom view as well. So you can see here that if I click on the bins, it opens up. And you can actually open multiple bins by using the shift click here, and you'll see all the contents. And you can use command click to basically add to that. So if I wanted to command click on here, I can add to what I see in there. And then let's say if I was to make a new bin, let's call this timelines. We could make a timeline in there, and we'll do that in a second. But just to show you that, for example, I might always want to have my audio in a list view. So if I was in my video and I go into my podcast, I might just make this a little bit bigger. You can see here that you've got a few different views that you can choose from. So you can choose from like your metadata view, your thumbnail view. You can go to your list view as well. And when you're in list view as well, you can actually basically choose a custom layout of this here. So you can say load my preset, and I quite like the shot taken scene. I can see my smart starting time code as well. So you've got that there. And basically you can right click and you can customize your column here. And you can choose what metadata is going to be in there and what order as well. So you might want to have this a little bit higher in the frames, and you can do that there. So that's that. And what you can do is you've also got your custom view. So at the minute, if I say that all my clips, usually I want them to be in my thumbnail view. But if I then go to the, let's say this bin, I always want to have them in thumbnail view. So if I go this, make this really big. And if I right click and I say always open in thumbnail view, I can choose that now, and you can see that it now goes red. And then if I go into the audio section and go to the list view, you can see that that's in list view, but our podcast bin is still in our thumbnail view. So that can be really, really useful as well. The other thing as well is that you can open bins as windows and tabs. So if I was to open as window, you could put that on a second display. If I had a second monitor connected, you could go to workspace and you actually could do the dual screen. That's grayed out at the moment because I don't have a second monitor attached to my computer, so that makes sense. And what you can also do is you can open up in tabbed bins as well. So I might always want to have access to my timeline bin very quickly, so you can open that as a tabbed bin as well. So that will then sit there for us to do that. So the next thing that we need to look at is we're going to look at syncing and basically syncing video to audio. So there's a few different ways that we could do that. But arguably the easiest way is the auto sync. So let's have a look at that. So if I open up my audio bin and then I open up my video podcast bin, including my pickup shot there that I have. So I've got 5 audio clips and then I've got 5 video clips. If I then select these clips and right click, I can then go to the auto sync, and then you'll see here you can go to the auto sync audio. So if I do that, I can then, just to show you a bit quickly before I do that, if I right click on a clip, video clip, and I go to the clip attributes here and go to the audio section, you can see that there's currently only one embedded mono track that's on there, and that's the one that's embedded on the video file. So if we then do our auto sync and right click and go to our audio sync, we go to our auto sync audio, and in this case I'm going to choose to do it by waveform, and I'm going to happy to retain the video metadata, but I don't want to include the embedded audio. So if I sync now, it will do that. And now if we look at our video clips, and we can do this at multiple clips at a time. So if I select all of those video clips with shift click, they all go a darker color to show that they're selected. And then I can right click on here and I can basically go to my clip attributes. And you can see now in the audio section that we have these linked audio. But what I want to do is I want to change the order of this because it just makes more sense to me. So I'm just going to click on here, and this is going to be mic 1, this one's going to be mic 2, this one mic 3, mic 4, and then I will do mic 5 as well. So now we have that on all of our clips as the clip attributes, which is really, really good. So let's have a look at that. So now if we look in our lists view here, you'll see in one of our parts here, you'll see that there is synced audio, and it will just pick one of these files as an idea of where that is. But we know that there's more than, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 mics all going into each of the video clips. And the video clips all have now all the same audio. Now, if we go back to just our video section now, let's go into our pickup as well. And actually, let's go to our list view here. So if we go to start time code, we can see here that they all have the same time code apart from this last clip where something's gone wrong. Now, the thing is that what we can do is if I just make a timeline here, I'll just call this mic. And just for now, I'll keep that as a stereo timeline, just to show you. So if we were to bring this extra clip in here, you'll see that it's currently online, so it's now in my timeline viewer. And you can see here that the start time code is here. Now, what we can do is go into our clip attributes, and in our time code section here, we can change the start time code. So if I was to make sure that's at the very beginning, so if I was right at the beginning here, and go to clip attributes, you can see that if I was to change this, this is going to make this clip go offline because it's referencing a different time code from the clip in the media pool. So that's a behavior that you would expect. So that will go offline. But when you bring this back in, it will be online. So it's just an order of operations to do that in a correct way. So now that we know how that works and we've changed our time code, we can now select both our video and the podcast there. And now you can see that they're all matching the same start time code. So what we can do now is select these video clips and we can create a new multicam clip using the selected clips. And we can do that. And we'll call this last lap. And we want it to be the same frame rate. So we'll do this at 30 as the kind of the clips. Because if we go back and look at our clip attributes in the video section, we'll see that our video is 30. So we want that to be the same as the multicam clip. So just to go back and we'll create our multicam clip now. There we go. And let's call this last lap. And again, we want that to be 30 frames per second. And we're going to sync now by time code as we've got the same start time code. And in this case, I want it to actually be the clip name. So in the order of the multicam, it will actually order that based on the clip name. And this is quite important as well. So in this case, I would like to have the source audio channels, which is going to be useful. And I'm not going to use the full extents because we are already using the full extents. We haven't basically made any kind of subclips from this, which is another conversation that we can pick up next month. And we're not going to move it into an original clips bin because I'm quite happy with the way that it's been organized already. And we don't need to detect clips from the same camera because this is just one continuous take. The camera wasn't turned on and off, but that is something that you can look at if you are doing that. So we are now going to create our multicam clip, and that's what a multicam clip looks like. The icon looks a little different there. You can see there's multiple kind of little video angles there. It looks different to the thumbnail of a video clip. And what I'll do is I'll just make if I open this up in a new window, I'll just make a new bin and I'll call this multicam, just to keep it organized. Quite happy with that. And actually, I'll just drag it in from over here. So if we go to podcast, there's my multicam, and you can see you can just drag this into your multicam bin there. And you'll see when you open that, when you click on the multicam, it opens up like this. So you can see here, you've got your different angles that you can see they're all in place. But what's important is that you've got at the moment, it opens up as a source because it sees this as a clip. But what we need to do is we need to bring this into a timeline and we need to use the multicam clip mode. So we will do that in a second. So let's go into our timelines and let's create our now timeline for this multicam. So let's create a new timeline. I'm going to go for the last lap. And I'm going to just go for the start time code at 0. If this was for broadcast, then it's typical to have like an hour in there to have an extra bit of more time for any kind of clocks and things like that. But I'm quite happy with that. And then I want to have the number of audio tracks. We need 5 audio tracks, and we know that it is mono. That's what we want to use. And in this case, we're going to use our project settings to do that. So that's now going to create our timeline. And you can see here at the top, it is now in our last lap timeline. If I use the shift and my mouse wheel button, you can see that you can change your kind of your track heights here, and you can see the one there represents that it is mono. If you want to add tracks, you can just right click in the track header, and then you get a contextual menu here where you can either add a track, just one individual track, or you can add multiple tracks, and you can choose the type of track that you want to create. So you might want to make monos or anything like that. So, but I'm quite happy with that. And also, if you right click in the track header, you can also change the track type as well. So if you accidentally make a stereo audio track and you need mono, you can quite easily change it to there as well. So that's kind of a very quick one there. So what we need to do is we need to now get our multicam, which is over here, and we need to drag this into our timeline. And now you can see, if you look closely, we can see that we've got mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, mic 4, and mic 5. So that's from all the audio sources that we had in here, which is great. And what we want to do now is use the multicam edit mode. So you can see here that it's got the same kind of multicam icon for us there. Obviously, I can't, if I go here, I need to actually go into the multicam mode here, and it looks very similar, so that can be a little bit confusing, but it's good to be in your multicam mode in order to edit the way that you want. And then this bit here, this is to do with when you make edits, what type of edit it's going to make. So if I make a change at the minute when I play this back.
Welcome everyone to the last lap.
When I press number 2 on my keyboard, it will make that change, and it will change and make a cut on my video and my audio. But in some cases, I might just want it to do just the video, which is what I want to do on here. So with that in mind, I've just gone on my video only. And now the changes that I make, I can use this, my keyboard. So if I play this back.
Welcome everyone to the last lap. Back again, I've got Charles Leclerc in my ear. He's checking out his bottom end. Welcome to everyone on YouTube.
So you can see the edits that you've got there. But you can also do this with the mouse as well. So if in the viewer, if I go onto a shot that I want, I can actually just click on here and it will make a cut. And you can see there it's only done the video only because we chose to only affect the video there. And you can also see that the icon around the clip looks a little different. There's an outline that is now blue. Now, if you need to swap any angles, you can move the basically the timeline playhead over here over the angle that you need to swap. And then if you look at the angle that you want, if you hold down Option on Mac or Alt on PC, you can see that the icon in the viewer changes from being basically a kind of little blade tool to basically being a swapping icon there. So if I click on that now, it will swap to the appropriate angle. Everyone's got their eyes closed there, so that's just great. So yeah, that's kind of the quick editing there. And with this in mind, you can essentially play this back in real time and cut it like a vision mixer. So that's kind of how that multicam workflow is designed to work. Now what I can do here is actually I'll just reset this here. And what I'm going to use now is our AI smart switch. So I'm going to use our smart switch now to use one of our studio tools in order to do this for us. So if I click this now, I'm going to use my the basic faster analysis here. And if I click on this now, it's not only going to look at the audio, but it's also going to look at the video and when people's mouths are moving. So this is one of the really big studio features that are going to really help speed up your workflow as you go and get some coffee and a cake and come back for a multicam that you can then use for your edit. So it's just going to run through that It's important to note that the time that it takes to process this is all down to your computer hardware. So it's just something to bear in mind with this. So if you have a really powerful Mac Studio or a really powerful Windows machine with an RTX kind of like a really good graphics card like an NVIDIA or something like that, then it will really help with this kind of process here. So we're going to do that as well. And then once it's done that, we'll have a little look at that and see how it gets on. And then we'll kind of perfect the edit a little bit here on there, and then we'll look at we'll add an intro video as well, and we'll have a little look at that. So there you go, it's done an edit for me. So this is about a 10-minute timeline, and you can see it's affected only the video only, which is great. And you can see that I can affect the edits here. Just to note here, just going through some of the fundamentals of how this works, you can see that I have a edit point selected here. So you can see that it's green. And that's based on you can see that the icon of my mouse changes. So if I bring it over a little bit to the side here, you can see that it's going to essentially overwrite, which could potentially be problematic, especially with sync. And you definitely don't want to ripple with that. You basically want to maintain the sync there. And what you want to do is you can also roll the edit. So if you can see here, that you can choose both of these points here, and you've got that now. You can roll that there. You can also use keyboard shortcuts. So with an edit point selected, you can use comma and full stop to basically go at 1 frame increments between there, which is super easy. And if you hold down shift, you'll be able to do that at 5 frame increments as well. So that's really kind of important to know with that. Some of the other edit kind of functions are not really done for the multicam section of that. So let's just say, for example, that I'm happy with that edit now, and we'll kind of move on to the next sections that we want to do. But before we do that and go any further, let's just have a little look at our multicam again. Because what we can do is we can open the multicam in a timeline. So if we open this in timeline, this isn't a time, it's just opening the multicam in a timeline. So this is the traditional kind of, layered based kind of extra tracks. And what you can do is if something, accidentally slips out of sync here, you can actually select them all and go to the right click, and you can go to the auto align clips. And in this case, you can sync either by waveform or time code, and I'll do that there as well. So that's great. So that's what we have over there. And just as you remember, you can make a multicam clip, not just by time code, but scratch audio. So if I was to make one here, you can see that you can angle sync. You can do this by in and out points, time code, sound, marker, everything that you could imagine. Time code is just really useful to have that. And there's some great pieces of hardware and products out there. We do them, third-party solutions do them as well, that can give you a really good sync point. And we'll have a little look at that at another point. Before we go any further, actually, what I will do is, I'll do this in the background and take advantage of the background processing, is I'll right-click on my multicam clip, and I'll go to the AI tools, and I will go to the audio transcription, and I will transcribe. And that will do that now in the background. So you can see here, we're new to DaVinci Resolve 21. You've got a little kind of background processing tasks window here, and you can see the job that's going on in the background, because we'll come back to that later. So I'm just going to let that keep that running in the background. So what I'll do, just to move on a little bit here, what I'll do is I want to maintain my multicam clip, because what you can do is you can flatten the multicam clip, and then you can go around, but it just takes a little bit more time. So what I typically like to do is I like to select all my clips and use my option drag up to basically do a duplication of that. And what I will then do is disable this track. And what I'll do is also in my edit index, in my tracks, I will just hide the video one here. Just going to, so it doesn't get in my my way. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flatten this so it will go back to the individual clips. So if I go to flatten multicam clip, and I can go to, I haven't done any grades, but I will just do that for now. So I'm quite happy with that, and I'm just going to give myself a little bit more real estate with that there. What I'll do now is let's bring in a intro track, and we'll do that as well. So what I'll do is I'll add tracks, and I'll just add one video track, and I will add one mono track. So let's do that there. So it's now got that for me. And I could rename this, so if I wanted to, I could do this as my intro, if I wanted to do that. Now if I go over here, what I will do is I will set my track targeting to this track here. So now A1 is down here. When I do a smart insert of something, the audio basically will go into there. So if I go into my intro here, I can open up this clip, and I've got some nice music over here. And actually what I'll do here, I'll set this to number 1, and we'll do that there, and it will then add that there. Let's have a look where that's gone. So that should insert video and on. You need to make sure that you've got your insert video and audio going into here. And let's just have a look where that is. So I drag this in over here. Let's do that. Here we go. I'll just move this down a little bit over here. And actually I'll just unlink there and bring this down a little bit here, and just go for a bit more empty space, and delete the empty tracks. And let's just give a bit more track height, just so we can see what we're working with. I don't need to see the audio in too much detail, but I would like to see the video in a bit more detail. So you can now see that we have that there, and I'll just put that back. So we can now see that we've got that intro track and the intro kind of graphic, which is great. And what I'll do as well is let's have a bit of a template here. We'll come to graphics later on, and we'll do some finishing later on. But now, for now, we'll come back to that, but we'll do some color grading for this now. So let's jump into our color page here. And this is what we expect. So I'll just get rid of my timeline because I'd like to see my clips in a bit more detail. And let's get rid of our gallery for now. Now, let's have a go. Let's have a look at towards the end over here. Okay, so we can see we've got different clips here. So even though we've got the same clips coming up again and again in the sequence, obviously by default, the way that DaVinci Resolve works is it does local grades, which means that if I have another version of this gentleman here, you can see here if I was to, let's say, make a change over here, let's do something really obvious so it's really easy to see. when I go to monochrome, it only affects that instance of the clip in the timeline, but it doesn't affect the next one as well. Now, that's how you would expect it to work and want it to work typically. But what you could do is you could look at using the remote grades as well, which means if I right click on here and you go to the use the remote grades, which is, here we go, use remote grades, you can see that a little icon comes down in the clips and it's now on every instance of that clip. So if I was to go to this clip here, you can see that the white balance is a little bit off compared to the other shots here. So if I was to go over here and let's say if we change the temperature, you can either click and drag to reduce and increase the temperature, or you can actually double click to then enter a number. So if I was to add 1500, minus 1500, you can see there it will then make that change across all the different versions of that clip. Now that's a really powerful, quick way of doing that if you need to work very, very quickly. But the problem with that is with remote grades, you can't really use any tracking information, so it's difficult. You can't really do this on multiple clips. So even though that's there, it can cause issues. It will go across onto the next one. So that is a bit of a problem. So typically another way that you can do it is working in your local grades, but being really smart with how you use your clip filters with that. So if I was to reset that across, and let's go back to our local grades. So we go back to use local grades. And again, that's back to if we had just a single change of there. But what we could do is go into our media pool, find the clip that's got the issue, which is this one here. And what we can then do is we can go and add some metadata. So if I was to, for example, go to the clip color and then go to orange, we could then go to the filter section here in the top here and use this little drop down arrow to go down, and we can choose how we're going to filter. So at the minute, that little tick shows that we're currently looking at all the clips, but we can now filter all the clips in the timeline. But in this case, I just want to see with orange, and we've got the 2 instances of that. So for example, if I was to do a minus 1500 on here, I could then select all of those and I could then apply the grade onto here, and you can do that there. If I reset that, you can also, if you've got a mouse, you can use the middle wheel button just to press and it will apply that as well. You could also grab this as a still. So if you right click in here, you could then go into here, reset, and then you could either apply a grade or you can actually append node graph. So that means that it will go after this point here. And we'll come back to that in a second. But for now, what we'll do is we will select those 2 and apply that grade. So now we've got that across there, and that's a quick way of working with that. So now if we go back to essentially the other clips here and go back to all clips over here, you'll basically get access to all of them there. And what I would then do is you could select these different clips. So I could select them. You can use command click to add to a selection. You can see there's a selection with that red outer line on there. So I'm quite happy with that. So command click or control click on PC, and I'll just add our other angles. So I just need to get one of these. I'm quite happy with that there. And if we then go into the split screen mode here, we've got a few different versions to see here. So you could go, there's a few different ways that you can do matching and comparing shots, but this is one of the ones that I personally like to use. So if I go to the selected clips now, I could then see all the different ones, and that's actually quite well matched. And based on the one that you've got here, you can select which angle you want to make any changes to. So if I was looking at my reference monitor, maybe that one is a little bit warm. Maybe this one is a bit too cold. So you can match shots very easily with that there. You can also wipe stills as well. So let's say that this is our master, and we're really happy with that. If we grab that one now, and we can go to the image wipe. If we go to a different angle now, we can then wipe between these different angles and matching those angles. So you can see that you have that there. And you've got different types of wipe mode. So you can go in here and you can choose between, going up and top here, and you've got the diagonal as one as well. So you can choose the different types of kind of split screen, and that's a good way of working with that. Now, what you can do is, if you have a podcast like this, there's a few different ways that you could do this that could really, speed up your color workflow, especially if it's always the same. If it's a good studio like this, where it's in a controlled environment, you've always got the same lighting kind of scenario there, the same camera settings. There's a lot of variables that can be controlled in that instance, and that means that you can do a lot of work beforehand, which can be really, really useful. So for example, if you had like a hero shot that you really like, you could build effectively a show LUT. You could either build a LUT for cameras, or you could actually do a still that you bring in after the fact. So we will look at both of them. So let's say, I'll just get rid of that one there. You can delete stills just by selecting them, and then you can actually go in there. And if you go into this bot here, you can see you can add still, still albums. So if I was to call this, if you double click, you can rename it. So if I was to call this Mike, that could be there. That's quite happy with that. And let's say that we had something that is kind of our look. So let's say we want this to kind of be a bit more poppy. So it's a little bit crushed in the shadows there. So let's just bring that up and let's bring down our highlights ever so slightly. And let's make it, I'm going to say a little bit colder, just to make it a little bit more kind of industrial with that there. And let's say we're just going to reduce our saturation of it. It's just a little bit blingy on there. So this is just something very, very quick that I might do on there. That's a kind of a creative decision that you can make. So probably not my best grade of all time, but it's just to show a demonstration of that. Now, if I was to grab that still, I could do that there, and you could rename that still. So I could say last lap, and I could do that there. What I can then do is two things. The first thing is I can bring this into my power grades, which means that if I go into another project in the same project library, that will be available for me. But another thing that I can do is if I go in and basically export that, you can export that as a PNG or anything else, these different formats, but they will come with a DPX. So if you go to a DPX here, and let's say if we go to last lap, let's call this number 2, and let's just put this as a PNG. You can go in here and export. You could send that to a colleague. They could then import that still. So if I was to go in and I could go to import and then push towards there. So let's say if I go to desktop, I could then bring in my last lap and bring that in. And there's my last lap too. So you can have those stills and share grades with your colleagues with that in mind. The other thing that you can do is you could do this as a LUT. So you can right click here and you can go to generate LUT here. But what I'll do is I will do that later on because we've got some Blackmagic Raw media, which is a bit more interesting. But I'll actually just quickly do this. So I'll do this as a 33 point. And let's just call this last lap 709. Because basically these clips were baked in at a 7.9 color space, which later on we'll look at working with Blackmagic Raw and how that would work. So just going to put that into our LUT folder. And if I was to go to the color section here, go to color management, you can go into open the LUT folder and it will bring us up into this folder structure. Just going to go into the list view just so I've got a bit more. Let's just bring this a bit closer just so we can see what's going on. And then if I open this in a new tab, I will see my last lap kind of cube LUT there. So let's bring that in. So I'll just rename this as last lap 709. And now let's bring this copy into here. And that's done that there, you can see down here. And then if we go back to DaVinci Resolve, if we then update our list, it will come in, we can save. And now if we go into our LUT, we'll find our last lap 709 LUT in here. But you just need to be careful with LUTs because they can be applied at a variety of different levels in the workflow, and you can easily accidentally duplicate them and put them in different spaces. You can also, people can have LUTs that you don't have and they might forget to send them to you. And they are kind of limited as well because you can't do everything like tracking information and in there. So that's just something to bear in mind. So you can see that you can either apply a LUT here. You can also apply LUTs in the media pool. So you can go onto here and apply a LUT. You can also do it at a node level as well. So it's just something to bear in mind. But those LUTs as well, we'll look at it with Blackmagic Raw later on as well. But you can also put them on camera. You can put them on monitors, on set, that you can have with that. So now that we've done that, let's carry on. I typically like to work with the power grades. That's just my personal preference. That's how I like to work. And what I would do is I would balance off all my shots first using that. And then what I would then do is then select all my clips and I would then apply my, my show LUT. So then if I then do that, I can append node graph and it will go after my balancing shot on there. And if you're sending this project to other people, you can give this labels. So you could say this is my balance, and you could say that this is our show grade on there as well. So that's a really quick and effective way. Another way that you could do this is you could also use groups. So if you go to, let's say, back to our clip color and go back to orange, this is, to be honest, I feel like with multicam, this is a bit of an extra step. Groups are more better for when you've got multiple scenes in a kind of more drama workflow where you've got certain similar shots in the same environment. So maybe that's something to bear in mind, but just to show you that you can do it, you can add clips. So if you select both of them, you can go to your groups. So if you go to add into new group, and let's say this is Cam 5, you can see that there is now a little linked icon down here, and you can then go in here and you then can choose your group pre-clip or your group post-clip. So it's just a way of having that extra layer of management. So that's with that there. So that's with the color grading perspective that you have. Another way that you could do this is also using an adjustment clip, but it can get a little bit clumsy. So for example, if I was to go into here, you can go into your effects and you can go to your effects here, and you can see that you've got an adjustment clip, and you could drag this over here, and then you can make this, if I just make this a little bit smaller, I could drag this to be the entire duration of the production. And then let's just give this a different color just so it's a bit more visually easy to spot. So you can see I've gone for a hot pink there. And if I go into the color section, you can see that's now got our pink clip, because it's been quite easy to go onto the same clip, and it will then be a bit confusing. But so if I go into the saturation here, this will then affect everything across there. So if I go onto there, let's just have a little look on there. It's quite interesting. So you can see on the top there that's going through up there. Basically, we just need to update some of those ones there. So just something to bear in mind is another workflow that you could have. And you can have this as a power still, basically as a kind of a template. So you could have a whole host of effects on there, and you can bring that into your power bins. So if I go onto the little 3-dot menu here in our media pool, you can see that we can show power bins. If I just give myself a little bit more space, similar to your power grades, this is things that you can have access to across your different projects in the same project library. So if I was, for example, to rename this, so selecting it in here, it then makes it open up in the inspector, as we would expect. And then in the file section here, I could rename this. So I could say black and white, and call that there. And that will change over there on the clip as well. Now if I was to bring this in here, I would then have access to the black and white. So if I was to delete that, I can then bring this back in, and this can host a whole host of templates and things like that. So you've got a few different ways of working in there, and it's just a case of finding the one that works best for you. Now let's look at basically some audio here as well. So obviously what I could do is, just before I do that actually, I'll just look at some motion graphics as well. So let's do that while we're in the flow of that. So you can see here that I've got a power still. So I'll just go for that, and let's just bring this template in here. And this is going to give me a motion graphic template that I made. So if I just go back a little bit here, you can see I can bring this across, and it's basically got a alpha track, which is really useful to have. I've also got this available to me in my effects. So if I go into my effects here, now go to my titles, down here as well, I've got my podcast section, and I've basically done this as a template. So I could bring this in over here, and this will basically wipe in and wipe out over there. So you can see what we've got there. And the way that I've done this template as well is that I've controlled what parameters are editable. So I can show you that I can go to edit version 2, for example, or episode 2 or episode 3. And basically if you go into the Fusion page here, so if you go, you can either use this little wand here to go into the Fusion page, or you can actually use going into the Fusion page down here, and it will go into the clip that is essentially at the highest point of where the timeline playhead is. So if we go into the Fusion page now, it will open up here. And you can see that it's in what we call a group. So it's a form of macro. So if I open this up now, this is something that I've pre-made. So the first thing I've got here is, just so if you're not used to Fusion, it's a compositor that works based on nodes in a similar way as the color page. So basically, when you've got a node selected, that's the one that you're going to be working on. You can see in our inspector, as we usually have here, you can double click to get access to the tools here. And then to see which ones are in the viewer, you can use the 1 and 2 to put them into here. So if I was to select, for example, our text tool, so if I was to go into here, I could press 1 and see our text tool to go there. And then typically you would have your media out node in the second viewer here, which is number 2, as you can imagine. So that's what we have there. And basically you would typically have these selected and the one that you're working on in the viewer 1. So the background is essentially, I've given it alpha. So this means it's just going to pass through with that there. It's not going to just have a solid black over that, which is great to put that over things. Then I've got a multi-merge node, which basically allows you to work in a bit more of a layer-based workflow. So it's a bit more familiar if you have multiple things selected, and it allows you to kind of organize based on the order of those layers as well. And then I've got a merge node, so I can combine that with my text here. So I've got my text going into the green section here, which is meaning it's in the foreground. And then I've got a yellow bit here, which is a PNG, which I've put into the background. So that's all you need to kind of really get your head around, is the idea that the green is in the foreground and the yellow is in the background. And the blue section here is your mask and your kind of effects. And you can see that over here, I've moved that. So I've added keyframes over here. So you can see that you can add keyframes by clicking on the little diamond keyframe kind of representation there. And then as you move through to a different point, you can change those parameters through there. So you can see it comes on and then it comes off. And the reason why it comes off back here is because it's based on the duration of the clip. And I can increase this as long as I need it to be, so that it will last as long as I need. And the reason why that is doing that, and that's really useful, especially when you're using it as a template, is because of this here, which is the keyframe stretcher, which is basically telling it to, at this point here, when I'm in between these frames in the clip, to stretch based on the animation. So it's going to protect the animation of the moving it on at the beginning, and then protecting the animation of it moving off at the end. So it's always got the same animation speed and protecting that. And then what you can do is you can then select all of these nodes, and basically you can right click. And just a note as well, when you select all of these nodes, you can see now that we've got our multi-inspector tool here as well, so we can access all the different ones that we want to work on at the same time here, which is really, really useful. But with all these nodes selected, you can now right click and you can go to macro, and you can create a macro here. And this might look a little bit intimidating, but all you need to really know is that the bits in red are what we've agreed to push across. And that's including the keyframe stretcher on there. And what you choose here, so if I go to my text, and if I go to the stylized text here, this means that this is going to be editable by the editors that I distribute this to. And then you can choose what it's going to be like as a macro or as a group. The group means that it's expandable in the way that I showed you, or a macro means that it's not expandable. And sometimes that's what you want in order to take away any complexity or any human error. And then you can basically save this as a macro. So if I was to say like Mike here, then you can save that into a certain folder location. So if I was to save that here, this is where it would be. And And what you can then do is you can actually package that to be distributed. So if I was to go over to my podcast graphics, if you follow this folder structure here, you will actually be able to wrap it up as a DFX, DaVinci Resolve effects package. And that's how like YouTubers and people kind of make templates for people to distribute it. And you can have it to include the media and a thumbnail and everything with that. And then all they need to do is basically open up that template and it will get populated into there. So that's just a good way of doing kind of motion graphics in Fusion. We might be able to another time go into a bit more detail, but hopefully that's just to, be able to kind of have a look at that and see if that's something that you're interested in. And that's just a great way to basically get me across from this edit to over there. So if I was just to fade this up a little bit.
Welcome everyone.
So I might just do that a little bit quicker. And let's fade up a little bit quicker as well.
Welcome everyone to the last.
So that's great. So then I can do that there. And then let's just fade this off at the end here as well. So I'm quite happy with that. I might actually just add a template as well on there. So if I was to, let's have a look at our graphics. Let's see what we've got. So I've got my graphics here. So I might just put another one here. So if I just add another track, you can see that it will also automatically add tracks. So if I was to just edit undo, you can see if I drag this in, you can see I've dragged this in, and actually this is a PSD. So you can drag this in as a PSD, and then let's make this full length as this, which is great, over here. And you can see that we've got this in the top right corner. And what I'll do is I'll just make this kind of fade at the same time as well. So let's just go a little bit closer. This is just your generic kind of crossfade here, or in this case, because there's no other clip, it's going to the back, just the black. But you've got a whole host of different templates, and video transitions that you can use here, which you can kind of preview with a kind of live preview as you go on here, and you could just drag that on there, and then when you select that, it will give you the options to kind of change the parameters in your inspector. But I'm just going to edit undo, and I'm just going to leave that as there, which I'm quite happy with. And what we'll do is we'll actually split. We don't need all of this here, so I'll just go a little bit closer. So you can zoom in the viewer and kind of move it around with holding down the middle wheel button on your mouse. And I'll just go a little bit closer over here. And what you can do is you can actually split the Photoshop kind of layers here. So if I was to right click here, I can split layers in place, and I can do that if I need to. And that's kind of a good way of accessing that there. So you could say that you want to access and animate some of these features as well. So for example, I don't want to have this here, so I might just delete that. I'll go for the big square. I don't want that either. So I could just delete that track, and I could delete this track as well on here. And then if I want to see the bit that's live here, that's that one here. And what I could do is I could actually animate that if I wanted to quite easily. So if I was to select, I've got that clip selected, and just go in a little bit closer on here. In the video section, I might go to my opacity here. And what I might do is I might just start down here with that going as with 0 opacity, so it's not seeable. And then what you can do is just click on this here, and that means that now this is going to be keyframeable, and I'm going to animate this. And if I make this just a little bit longer over, let's say over here, let's try it over here for now. And then if I increase the opacity, it will essentially add me a second keyframe. So now it will go through there. And I'll just mute this for now, just so you're not hearing them as I kind of scrub through this. So you can now see that that is animated with that in mind. And what I can do is I can then essentially extend that in my curve. So if I was to then have that clip selected and go into my keyframe section here and go into my opacity, I will basically be able to see any keyframes that are added. So if I make this a little bit bigger, you can see, and pop this out, you can see the keyframes that have been added in there. And what I can do is can actually go into the curve mode if I wanted to. So I can easily do that. So we can go into the keyframe, basically this part here, and you can see at the bottom here, if I choose this little icon here, this will then make this go into the curve mode rather than just my normal keyframes. And then you can actually reposition the kind of the speed of that animation. You can right click on a keyframe and you can actually choose the way that that eases in and eases out as well, if you needed to. And what then you can then do is you can actually select those parts of those keyframes with a little selection tool, and you can right click and you can go, for example, loop type, and you can go to loop, and that will now, if I play this back, will actually animate on and off as I need to. So in this instance, it's actually too of a slow animation. So I'm just going to edit undo. So that's too slow for now. So I'll actually, let's just reposition that a little bit there. And let's just get a little bit closer on here. So if I use the Command plus, you can zoom in on there and you can see where that is in place there. So I'll just move that over here and let's just make sure we've just got this one selected now, and let's just bring that back a little bit here. And now let's select them both, and now let's try looping that. So if we do that now, you can see that it's now going to animate, and that's going to extrapolate for as long as I need to. So that can be a useful way of working with animation. So now let's look at the audio section of this now. So let's go in there. So the first thing to do is I'm actually going to duplicate this timeline, because it's always good to kind of back up your work. So I'm just going to duplicate this, and I will call this version 2 here. And you can also do that in the media pool as well. So you can go on here and say, you know, you can actually go to the timelines, and you can actually go to the duplicate timeline here, or you can actually just use Command C, Command V to copy and paste. So if I just Command C and then Command V, it will make a copy of that. So I can actually, let's just copy that, and there we go. And I'll just double click on it in there just to rename it, and let's just call this version 3. I'm going to do this 2 ways. The first way is I'll do it with just the AI tools that we have available for us. So let's just go to our timeline, let's go to our AI tools, audio assistant, and let's click on that there. You can do this in the edit page, but you can also do this in the Fairlight page. And it's a bit more visual with the way that it does this as well, so it's a bit easier to follow. So if I go to Tools, Timeline, AI Tools, Audio Assistant, you then have a host of different delivery standards that you can do. And in this case, I'm delivering to YouTube, but you can see you've got a whole host of different broadcast and kind of streaming solutions there of different types of standards, but I'm quite happy with just the YouTube. And we'll do a auto mix on here. And yeah, this is going to do a host of different things. It's going to identify the types of of audio that it is. So it's going to identify what is dialogue, what's music, what sounds like a sound effect to it. It will then label the track. So you can see over here, it's labeled that as a music track, which is really useful. It will give you a color code. It will basically add voice isolation and noise reduction. It will add automation as well into there. So there's a whole host of different things that it will do as a really good way of working with that. So this again is a local process on there. So it's not going online or anything like that to carry out this process on. So we're going to do that, and it's just going to identify those. It's already done that. It's going to do the music. It'll also do normalization as well. So it will look at that and make sure that nothing's too loud for that delivery standard over there. So you can see here in the top here that it's done. It's looking at the loudness for a YouTube setting. So it's already changed our monitors there as well. And you can see that it's applied a little bit of a few variety of things. It's done a bit of dynamics, some EQ, and it's done a bit of a limiter as well on there. So it is a really powerful tool. I would definitely recommend having a look at that. But now I'm going to show you a bit more of a traditional audio post workflow with that. So that's why I duplicated that timeline, and you can see that we can go between different timelines here in the Fairlight page just by going in here as well. Just to note here in the preferences in the video and audio section over here, so if I was to go on the system section and the video and audio out, you can see how many spatial audio formats that we support, and that includes Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, sorry, a bit of a Freudian slip there, Dolby Atmos and Apple Spatial Audio for immersive workflows as well over here. But we're just going to be delivering to stereo at this moment and time. So that's what we have here. And something to point out in the Fairlight section, you've got your bus format. So in this case here, we're going to be delivering a stereo bus, which is typical. So that's the normal default setting that it doesn't. You can access that as well in the edit page if you need to check that is there. But if you ever needed to do like a 5.1 kind of delivery, then you can do that there, and Dolby Atmos and so on and so on. So let's go back into that there. So with the audio section, if I solo this track here, firstly, I can see that there is a little bit of noise on there. So we've actually just need to turn on our audio monitoring.
Welcome to
so if I just lift the level here, so at this moment what I'll do is I'll just unlink these clips, and let's just listen to this.
Live, don't forget, get the like in.
So you can hear a little bit of that there. But what I can do is go into the inspector section. There's two ways that you can do this in the Fairlight page. You can always use your trusty inspector. So just like in the edit page here. So in this case, you can see that I've got this the source, so the individual clip that's been selected on the actual timeline. So you'll see this change if I go to a different clip here. But what if I click on the track, then you can see that I've gone into the track section here, and now that's going to apply the track level effects. And you can go between the clip level and the track level, and you can see that this is in the edit page as well. But you have to manually go into the kind of track section here on there. So just to bear that in mind. So you could do that there, and what I could do is I could do some voice isolation, which again is a really powerful kind of noise reduction AI tool, really one of the really powerful studio tools that we have access to. But in this case, I'm actually going to do this in the mixer. So we can actually have track effects. So if you go into the three-dot menu here in our mixer, you can go down and look at our visible track effects, and I've included my voice isolation. And I can see that I've got track 5 selected, so you can see I've got track 4 selected now. And if I go back to track 5, I can see that there. And what I'll do is I'll just turn on my voice isolation on here, and you can see that it's gone red like that. And you see you can actually, it's opened up in the track effects there in the inspector. And you can either click on the little kind of cogs here and do that here and do that as an effect, so that 100% might be a little bit too much in this instance. Or you can do this in the inspector as well. So that's what you can do, and you can have this as a preset. So if I was to say, click on this little plus icon over here, we can access that there, and I could say that is mic over there, and I could do that if I needed to. And then I've got that preset ready to go if I need to do that. So I'm quite happy with the isolation of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just make these tracks a little bit narrower over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything that isn't audio track 6. So if I go over here, what I'll actually do is we'll go to the Fairlight section here, and I'll go to the bus format. And what we'll do is we'll add basically another bus here, and we'll call this our dialog bus. So I'll call this our dialog box, and I'll do the dialog. And then what I'm going to do is I'll say that this is a mono one for here, so that we'll do that there, as those are mono. And what we'll do is we'll do this as a one here. So if I was to select 1, 2, 5 here in the bus, I can go into my bus outputs, and I've got this as my dial. But what I can then do is I can say I don't want this to be in dial, but what I want it to do is I want to send these out to my dialog bus 2. So you can easily send those in there. So you can do that as a really good way of having the different buses, so you can only affect those ones there. So if I go over here now, if I just make this a little bit bigger, if I go to, you can see that my dialog bus now, bus 1, is now going to my dialog bus 2. So that means that I can do things here now that's going to affect just my dialog tracks without affecting my music. So for example, you could have EQ, you could just have a little bit of a compression here, and this will affect just
early doors, so we don't have to remind you later.
Making sure that basically that the high points don't exceed and be extremely distractingly loud, and it lifts up the lower bit as well on there.
Mate, my humble co-host back from Zandvoort. Yeah,
so you can just affect a little bit of that there, of where that point is going to be. So that can be a really, really useful one to have. The other thing that you can have as well is your EQ. So you might just want to have a kind of a low pass filter just to take out a bit of the grumbling.
From the land of the orange.
And you can basically affect that there. And again, you can have presets with the EQ section of that there. And that is some of the fundamentals of that there with the way that the audio is going to be. As well as that, what I would typically do is do some normalization. So if you right click these clips, you can actually go to the clip operations here. So if we select all of those clips, those dialogue ones, and you could go to normalize audio levels. You could use one of the templates that's kind of available there. I'll just bring that back. So let's go to clip operations, and let's go to normalize. And I'm actually going to go to independent here. So it'll look at individually, and -9 is about right here. But you could use one of your kind of industry standard kind of parts here, so like YouTube or Netflix. And if you go to mine,
Man, it was crazy.
-9 is about right on there. And I've got my viewers there that can see what.
Good coverage, love that. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it at home, make sure you like and
So
subscribe.
that's
But yeah, no.
about right in there. So yeah, we could keep going with audio, but I know I'm conscious of time, and I just want to quickly show you a few other bits here. So what we can do is let's now take advantage of the transcription that we did earlier. So if we go to our multicam clip over here, we had our transcription. So if we go to the AI tools and I go to our audio transcription, you can see that we've got our transcription here. I can make this bigger. And text-based editing is really, really popular at the minute. So it's really a quick and effective way. So if I was to, take sections of here, you can start to build your edit here, and you can go in and start to build your edit as you need to. And then obviously, as this is a multicam clip, you can then go back into your multicam workflow and make any changes that you need based on that. But you can also export this as a text file. You could send that to the producer, you can send that to the director, and then what you can do is then point the transcribed clips at the audio transcription, and it will make a timeline for you. So what I'm going to do is I'll just make sure that I don't have any in and out points on there. So if I just bring this into the source, let's go into here, quite happy with that. And what we'll do is we'll go to the AI tools, audio transcription, and what we'll do is we'll create a new timeline using the IntelliScript. And what I'm then going to do is point this towards basically a text file, which I did here. So you can see that that's there. We've also started to explore support for Final Draft, which is one of the leading kind of script writing software formats. But for now, I'll just go to my plain text file for now. And then if I open up that there, it will make me a timeline, which is great. So if I just reset that there, you can then see what we have going on over there. I'll just go into the dual screen mode and go into the multicam mode for now. And then, for example, I could swap any of these angles if I needed to. And the great thing, again, is that we know that all the audio is the same across the different ones that we have here. And then what I could do from there is that I could duplicate this timeline over here. And let's put our timelines into our timelines bin, just so it's nice and organized over here. And what I'll do now is I'll actually just rename this, and you could do this in your thumbnail, your views here, or you can do this in the media pool. And let's just call this vertical. So if I just do that, and we'll now have that there. And what we'll do is we'll right click and go into our timeline settings. So you're just right clicking on the stacked timeline little thumbnail there, and then going into your timeline settings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in this instance, override the project settings, which in this instance is 16:9, 1920 HD. But what I'll do now is I'll go to the vertical resolution over here, and now it's going to be repurposed with that. And then if I needed to, you can go in and select the clip, and in the inspector, in the video section here, you could pan based on that, and you could animate that. But what you can use, this is quite useful, but it's more useful for shots where they're moving. So with podcasts, obviously they're typically sat down. So you could do something like this, and then what you could do is you can actually copy and paste attributes. So if you would just use Command C or right click and then Control, you could then select all the clips after the timeline playhead with Option Y or something, and then you can basically do the paste attributes. So you can use the ones here, so you can right click and you will be able to paste the attributes across there. Just going to find where that is. And what you need to make sure is that also it's you need to have it flattened with that. So it works best if you're kind of working with the keyframes, is that you flatten it before you start to work with that. So if you flatten that multicam clip across there, you will then be able to have the option to either remove attributes, or if you needed to, you can paste attributes as well. So if we had this moved over, so let's say a bit over here, and then Command C, and we were to paste those attributes. Let's have a look where those are is. It might be in the clip operations. This might have changed since I last looked at this. So that's interesting. I'll have to go away and look at that, where that is. So yeah, you can remove attributes, but can you paste attributes? There you go. So yeah, so you just need to make sure that you've copied there correctly, and then you can paste those attributes, and you can choose what parameters you want to bring across there. So it might just be my position, and I might just want it to be that there. So if I was to do that, that'd be go across. But you can also use one of our studio features. So if I was to, let's say, reposition this here, if I was to go to the Video AI Smart Reframe, you can go to the pan only mode here, and then it will essentially add keyframes, and it will, you can go in there and you can perfect that as well. But that's a really good way of kind of versioning with that. Finally, for this now, let's just have a look at some subtitles, and then we will have a quick look at the cut page, and then we'll have a little look at the delivery page. So I have overran a little bit, so apologies, but I'll probably be another 5 to 10 minutes if you want to stick around and see the whole of the session on here. So I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is go to the timeline, go to our AI tools, and you can go into your create subtitles from audio. And again, you could enable your extended language support, and it will do translation. And again, this is a local process, but I'm quite happy with the audio section here. And I could then create those subtitles. And then what we'll do is, these clips are, the subtitle clips are, they behave in the same way as video and media clips, so video and audio. So you can trim them, you can select them, you can reposition them. You can go into the inspector and have a look at that. So it will create those on there. So you can see I've got these individual created a subtitle track, which you can create manually if you need to by right-clicking on here. You could rename this, so I could say, yeah, English on there. And then if I have any of these subtitle clips selected, then in the inspector here in the video section, you can see that we've got that there, and you could make any corrections. So maybe it might need some grammar, or I might need to make any spelling corrections based on that there. And again, you can trim these as normal clips as well. And then in the track section here, you can change the fonts, you can change a variety of different kind of how it looks and how it feels, and what you need it to be for you. And DaVinci Resolve, if your system can see basically the fonts, if you've got the fonts, then you can make those changes. But you need to make sure, if you're working with your colleagues, that they've all got access to the fonts that you're using. And then that 3-dot menu here, you could then save this as a track preset as well. So you can do a whole host of different things in there if you needed to. So if I was to save this as that, I'm quite happy with that. Then in that 3-dot menu, you could then see that preset, and then you could export that preset to your colleagues, and they could load it in there as well. So that's that there, and let's have a look at some other ones. So if you go to the effects here, and you go to your titles, you can go to your subtitles here, and you can drag on some of your right-on ones here. So you can do the yellow and shadow, or if you pick one of the white ones here. But you can also do like the right-on stuff as well. So that can be really useful. So for example, if I drag this into the track header, it will change. And then in here, we could increase the size.
To anyone, you can do
Over here, you can say that's going to be animated now, and you could save that as a preset. So you've got that there if you need to with that. So that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to show you there. And now very, very quickly, I just wanted to show you, so obviously in our website, on our website here, if I look at our products here, you can see that we've got a whole host of different products. So the way that I synced my my multicam was with timecode, but you could use Scratch Audio, and there's a whole host of products that give you timecode, and that's including our HyperDecks. Our HyperDecks are super popular for podcast workflows with the way that they work in there. Basically giving you the same time code, and there's different ways that you can do that. But another way that you can do it is by using our ATEM switches as well. They also can give time code. And Greg in the chat will be able to give you a lot more information about it than I am. That's his area of expertise. I'm more of one of the post-production guys, but the workflow in post-production is really, really seamless in here. So for example, the ATEM Extreme ISO G2, the word ISO there means that it's going to record each source individually as well. So if you look at this here, if you go onto our ATEM ISO range here, and Catherine will be able to put the link to the location of the website on here, it will give you a DaVinci Resolve project for you to practice this workflow that I'm just about to show you. And it's only going to take me 5 minutes. That's how easy it is. And basically this is what you get. So if I just quickly show you in my drive over here, let's have a look. So if I go to my ISO over here, so this is typically what you would see. So you get your video ISO files, you get your audio source files. The ATEM ISO will give you a DaVinci Resolve project, which is a DRP. It will give you a flattened MP4 of what was done by the Vision Mixer in real time. And if you use our cameras as well, and if you choose to do the ISO workflow with our cameras, you can actually trigger record at the same time on board on your cameras. So you can seamlessly kind of go back into that workflow. So let's just see what that actually looks like. So let's just import that project. So I've got my Matt and Fred's project over here. It opens up the project over here. And to take advantage of that, let's go into the cut page. And you can see that we've got the ISO files in here. So you can access your bin over here. And we might need a session that goes into a bit more detail in here with the cut page and ISO. And we also have the replay controls, which is another session if anyone's ever interested in that as well. But what the whole kind of crux of this is the sync bin. So with the way that I showed you previously, the traditional multicam workflow, it's great, but it means obviously that you need to start from again. So you don't get a project that's already been cut by the Vision Mixer, and you have to start again. But that's so with the cut page in the ISO workflow, you can save a huge amount of time. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose to have my video only because I've got an audio track here, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on the audio side of things in this section here just because we're running out of time. And in the basically what you can do is when you're in the sync bin mode, and this is dependent on which bin you are in as well. This is with all the clips that have the same time code. If you're using clips in here that you don't have the same time code for, you can basically use a different way of doing it. So if you use our classics kind of shift click to access the different ones here, and you were to select all these clips, you can go to the sync clip section and sync it by a different means, like the classic kind of auto sync by time code, audio, in and out point. But in this case, because we've used the ISO, we already have access to the time code. So if I just go back to our ISO bin, you can see that we've got that there. And what I can do is I can literally use the mouse to just kind of paint angles on. And it will source overwrite with that on there, and everything will be in sync. So I can actually do this really, really quickly with the speed editor. So if I just go to the overhead camera now, I'm using the speed editor, which is really fantastic for this workflow. So it's Bluetooth connected on here. I'll just mute our friends from High Horse and Matt Freds for now, just so it's not driving us crazy. But you can see here, there's this smart indicator, which is going to basically say it's going to identify the cut point that's closest to the timeline playhead. And then you can use this to essentially roll edits that you need to. So you can just go really quickly over here. I can then use my different angle to add on there. I can go onto my next angle. I might want to go to the wide on there. I can go into here. I've got a transition that was done by a colleague. So I could actually get rid of that if I wanted to, or increase the duration. So you can hold things down and increase the duration of that really, really quickly to get a really fast edit there as well. And if you need to edit undo, you can just press double escape to go into there. And that's a really fast workflow with everything that you have in there. So that's just, I just wanted to quickly show you that basically the working with the speed editor in there, because let's now look back at the one of these clips here. So if I go over, let's have a look. I'll actually just put this clip number 1. Let's put not that angle. I'll actually go for angle number 4 here on top here. So if I just go back into the timeline mode here, if I select that clip now and go into the inspector and then go into the file section here, you can see that we're using the ISO file, which is essentially the concept is the same as like a proxy. But what I can do is the project actually makes a folder for us called Blackmagic Raw, and I've got a Blackmagic Raw clip of what was recorded on camera here. So you can see the 6K one here versus the HD one here. And what you can go to is you can go to the timeline video, and then you can go timeline up here, and then go to the video section here, and then you can go to the switch to camera angles. And basically this is going to now be able to be remastered at 6K with a Blackmagic Raw film Gen 5. So you've got all that color information available to you. So in that case, you could go in and you could color manage, let's just say here, into a 709. And now that's going to be an accurate way of doing that. And you could deliver that at 6K. So after the fact, it's really good for doing that. Finally, I just wanted to quickly show you delivery. So you've got your quick export here. So you can deliver it straight to YouTube and your different kind of deliverables here. And so you can sign into your social media accounts and different platforms. So you can sign in there if you need to. But what you can do is you can add presets to your quick export. So if I was to go over here now and I was to set this as a preset, what I can then do is click on this 3-dot menu over here, and I can then save that as a preset. And let's say if we call this mic, and I can give this an icon. So let's say if I give this vertical, and I can add to quick export. If I then go back over to our quick export over here, there is our preset. We can choose to do that there, and that's the same in the on the edit page as well. And let's say if we were to pick a section here just very quickly in and out, and let's just give this a location. Just for example, let's push this towards our desktop. Let's have a look at that, and you can see new to DaVinci Resolve 21. You've got your file size there, and let's say we wanted to then add that to the render queue. What we can now do is we can have our background rendered. So if I was to render that, I can see it's rendering there, and I can go off and I could start to do other work. So if I was to go over and start to grade my my Blackmagic Raw clip, this will continue to be rendered, and it's done that now in the background. Okay, yeah, all right. So that was quite a lot. I hope that wasn't too much information. I hope it was useful. It was very fun to do that. So I can see there's a question there about the background render. So that is in your preferences. So you need to go into the video preferences, and you need to go into the system section here, and then you can go into the background tasks, and then you need to enable the background renders, and that's only new to DaVinci Resolve 21. So that is just something there which will happen. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that was useful. Thank you for joining me. And I will join you for another few more minutes, I think, another 5 minutes or 7 minutes or however long it takes. And I'll answer some questions in the Q&A. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you next month. I'm going to be doing another session. We're going to be doing the kind of traditional drama narrative workflow, so not the kind of multicam workflow, and we'll kind of go through that together. So thank you very much, and I hope you're okay out there in the heat wave, and I hope you make the most out of it and enjoy your weekend, and I hope you enjoy continuing to use DaVinci Resolve. Thank you.